What happens when a movie star walks onto a cozy British sofa, expecting adoration, and instead meets a presenter who's not afraid to ask what everyone else is thinking? On this morning, beneath the soft lighting and friendly chatter, Jason Momoa thought he was in safe territory. But as Allison Hammond's questions grew sharper and his answers more arrogant, the smiles faded, the tension rose, and daytime TV turned into a live wire confrontation. By the time it was over, the nation wasn't talking about his new project. They were talking about the moment Allison finally snapped and told him to leave. The This Morning studio looked exactly as viewers loved it. Warm light pouring through the fake windows, pastel cushions perfectly arranged on the big corner sofa, mugs on the coffee table, the London skyline glowing softly on the screen behind. Everything screamed comfort, familiarity, easygoing British chat. Everything except the man sitting on the end of the sofa. Jason Momoa lounged back, one arm draped over the cushion, legs spread a little wider than necessary. He wore an expensive but casual denim shirt over a simple t-shirt. His jaw was clenched though, and his eyes flicked around the studio with a mixture of boredom and suspicion. Allison Hammond sat opposite him, perched slightly forward, hands joined on her knee. She smiled wide and genuine as ever. Next to her, Dermot O'Leary shuffled his notes, shooting her a quick, "Here we go" glance before turning his trademark easy grin on their guest. "Good morning, everybody." Allison beamed, looking straight down the camera. "We have a very special guest on the sofa today. He's been the talk of the town around the world. All over the headlines, Jason Momoa is here." The studio crew gave a polite burst of applause. Momoa managed a controlled nod and a tight-lipped smile, lifting his hand in a small, almost reluctant wave. "Jason, welcome," Dermot said smoothly. "Nice to have you with us." "Yeah, well," Momoa shrugged, his voice clipped. "Thought I'd give daytime another chance." The joke, if it was one, landed with a dull thud. Allison laughed anyway, her instinct to keep things light kicking in. "We're honored you chose this morning, babes," she said warmly. "We're very chilled here. No grilling, just a chat." Momoa's eyebrow twitched. "We'll see," he replied. And there was enough steel in his tone that Dermot's smile faltered for half a second. Allison pressed on. "So, Jason, you're here today to talk about your new environmental initiative, which I think is amazing," she began, tapping the card in her hand. "You've been very vocal about ocean conservation. How are you feeling, really?" It was the gentlest, kindest opener she could have chosen. Yet Momoa's response came wrapped in thinly veiled irritation. "How am I doing?" he repeated. "Better than when I was stuck doing projects for Suits who only cared about the box office. Let's put it that way. I've escaped the Hollywood machine. Now I just have to deal with the talking heads asking about it." Allison blinked once. The phrase "talking heads" hung in the air like a bad smell. Dermot shifted slightly, clearing his throat. "Well, Marcineko," Dermot said lightly, "luckily for you, we quite like being talking heads around here." The audience chuckled, easing the tension a bit. Allison let out a big, generous laugh. "Yeah, love. If I'm a talking head, I'm the one with the best hair," she joked, pointing to her magnificent mane. Momoa gave a small huff of amusement, but there was no real warmth in it. "You said it, not me," he murmured. Allison ignored the jab. She'd been in front of cameras long enough to know when a guest came in prickly. Her job was to draw them out, not push them over the edge. At least not yet. "Let's go back a bit," she said, tone gentle. "People here grew up watching you, Jason. The young actor on Baywatch, the serious roles, the global action star. When you look back at that younger Jason now, what do you feel?" For the first time, something like emotion passed over his face. His jaw worked and he looked down at his hands. For a second, everyone in the studio felt the weight of the question. Then his eyes hardened. "I feel," he said slowly, "like he was exploited to keep a myth alive, to keep everyone else comfortable. Everyone loved the image of that muscle-bound star, but nobody cared about the person behind it. Not the studios, not the press, certainly not the public." There was a beat of silence. Allison's smile faded into a sympathetic frown. "I think that's a bit harsh on the public, Jason," she said softly. "People watching at home cared very deeply. Did they? He cut in. Or did they just enjoy the spectacle? People love a tragedy, Allison. It gives them something to talk about over their tea. Dermot shifted again, his fingers tapping his notes. I think people would say they admired your commitment and felt for you, mate, he offered carefully. I know I did. Momoa's gaze snapped to him. Admiration doesn't change the script, he said sharply, and it certainly didn't stop the media from dissecting my personal life until it was in ruins. The mood on set dropped a few degrees. Even the steady hum of the studio equipment seemed to quieten. Allison took a slow breath. She understood pain. She also understood when someone was using it as a weapon. Of course it didn't, she replied gently. And nobody's trying to minimize that. Your work has meant a lot to your fans. It still does. I think people just want to make themselves feel better about what happened. Momoa interrupted again, a bitter edge in his voice. You're all very good at that. Rewrite the story so you look like the heroes. There it was, the first flash of true arrogance, not just defensiveness. It washed over the sofa like a cold wave. Dermot glanced at Allison. She gave the tiniest shake of her head. She could handle this. She straightened slightly, her tone still soft, but more grounded. Okay, she said. Let's talk about your version of the story then. You've left the big franchises. You've spoken openly. You've made documentaries. Some people say you've already told everything there is to tell. Why keep going? Why another initiative, another interview, another spotlight? Momoa gave a humorless smile. Because as long as people like you keep asking, there's clearly more to say. The audience let out a small, uneasy laugh, unsure if it was supposed to be funny. All right, Allison said slowly, but we're not dragging you here, babe. You chose to come on. I chose to come on, he replied, to discuss important work, not to be poked at like some exhibit from a broken Hollywood career. Dermot rubbed his forehead. We're just chatting, Jason, he said, still trying for friendly. It's this morning, not a tribunal. Feels the same from this side of the sofa, Momoa shot back. Allison's eyes flashed for a fraction of a second, the first sign of annoyance. She masked it with a smile, but the warmth was dimmer now. Okay then, she said. Let's talk about the work. You've said your new project is about helping people feel heard and respected. Do you ever worry that when you speak about the industry so publicly, the people you left behind don't feel that same respect? Momoa's laugh was sharp this time. Respect? You think they respected me? That system respects profit, not people. If they want respect now, they can start by apologizing to me and my co-stars for what we went through. And what would that apology look like? Allison pressed, still calm. A phone call, a statement, a private conversation. Try a lifetime of silence, Momoa said coldly. No briefings, no leaks, no smears, just leaving us alone. Something the media seems incapable of. He looked pointedly at the cameras as he said it, as if this morning itself were part of the machine he despised. Dermot shifted, about to change the subject, but Allison wasn't ready to let it slide. The viewers at home deserve more than rehearsed bitterness, Jason, she said gently but firmly. You do realize you're sitting on national television right now. You're not exactly choosing silence yourself. For the first time, a few people in the audience clapped, a small burst of approval. Momoa's eyes narrowed. Difference is, he said through tight lips, I'm telling my truth, not selling someone else's. Allison smiled, but this time there was a sharper glint behind it. Well, she replied, here on This Morning, we like to think the truth can handle a few questions. The tension thickened. The show's producer, watching from behind the cameras, signaled for a break, but they still had a minute to fill before the ad bumper. Dermot gave a nervous laugh. On that note, he said, don't go anywhere. After the break, we'll be talking to Jason about life outside Hollywood, his kids, and what he really thinks about the studio system today. Momoa sat back, crossing his arms, jaw set. Allison kept her smile, but her eyes stayed locked on his. The music swelled. The director called, and we're out. The red light on the camera went off, but on that sofa, the interview was only just beginning to crack open, and everyone on set could feel that the next segment was going to be far more explosive than the first. The moment the cameras shut off for the commercial break, the studio temperature, seemed to drop. Crew members hovered uncertainly. Makeup artists pretended to check their kits, and even the studio interns, usually buzzing with clipboards, kept their distance. Jason Momoa sat rigid on the sofa, arms crossed tightly, lips pressed into a flat, hostile line. His foot tapped impatiently on the carpet as if every second spent here was beneath him. Across from him, Allison Hammond inhaled deeply through her nose, summoning every inch of her famously sunny patience. Dermot O'Leary leaned closer to her. "You all right?" he muttered out of the corner of his mouth. "Peachy," she whispered back with a smile she definitely wasn't feeling. The floor manager raised his hand. "Back in 4, 3, 2. The red light blinked on. "Welcome back to This Morning," Dermot said, turning his smile up to full wattage. "We're here with Jason Momoa talking about his new environmental initiative." Momoa didn't smile. He didn't move. He stared ahead, jaw tight, as if the interview were a punishment. Allison kept her voice bright. "Now, Jason, love, we want to shift gears a bit and talk about your life outside the big studio machine. You've spoken before about how freeing it feels. What's the biggest difference for you?" Momoa gave a small, dismissive shrug. Freedom, privacy, basic respect, all the things the studio system apparently struggles to provide. It was coated in venom. Allison blinked slowly. "Well," she said politely, "that's quite a statement." "It's quite a reality," Momoa snapped back. Dermot cleared his throat. "You've said before that the press is less intense now you're making independent projects. Do you think that's helped your family adjust?" Momoa scoffed. "I think it helps when people don't treat you like a prized asset for existing." Allison clasped her hands and decided to try the gentlest approach. "We've all seen the clips of you and your family at events. You look happy, settled. Do your kids understand any of what's going on?" Momoa frowned, annoyed. "My kids are children. That's what they understand. Why don't we keep my children out of public conversation?" Allison's eyebrows lifted. "I'm not prying, babes. I'm asking because you've spoken about them so lovingly in interviews. It's only natural people are curious." Momoa tilted his head at her with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Funny how the media loves pretending it's concerned about my kids' well-being when it's the media that endangered them in the first place." That stung. The crew shifted uncomfortably. Dermot opened his mouth, but Allison gently placed a hand on his arm. She had it. "All right," she said softly, but there was an edge to it now. "Let's talk about your relationship with the big studios. You've said your relationship is complicated." Momoa let out a harsh laugh. "That's a polite way to put it." "Well," Allison said, leaning forward slightly, "a lot of viewers wonder whether there's any hope for reconciliation. Do you see a world where you and a major studio sit down together?" Momoa's eyes narrowed. "Not unless they wake up one day and decide to stop being a ruthless corporation." Dermot winced. Allison kept her face neutral but firm. "That's harsh, Jason." "It's true," Momoa snapped. "Everyone wants to pretend the big studios are the golden gods, the safe bet, the perfect establishment. Meanwhile, the independent actor is the one they throw under the bus." Allison tilted her head. Do you really think that's how people see you?" Momoa looked at her as though the question were idiotic. "It's how they've always seen me. I wasn't born to matter, only to perform." Allison inhaled slowly. "I think a lot of people would disagree with that. You've done meaningful work. You've directed films." "I've been blamed for every box office failure since birth," Momoa cut in. "Yes, I'm aware." Her patience was thinning. Dermot tried to jump in. "Jason, mate, you do matter. People care. You can feel the room. Yeah, people are listening." Momoa scoffed loudly. "People listen because they love the spectacle. They love seeing an action star torn down. They love the drama." "Well," Allison said, smiling tightly, "you're giving them plenty today." Momoa didn't appreciate the humor. His jaw tightened. "I came here to talk about serious issues," he said coldly, "not to have my career trauma turned into breakfast entertainment." Allison's face softened. "Then stop treating every question like an attack." That hit him like a slap. He blinked, then glared. Dermot stared at the carpet. "You know what?" Momoa said, voice dripping with disdain. This is exactly why I left. People act like they want honesty, but what they really want is a performer performing a role for them again. He leaned forward, eyes locked on Allison. I'm not here to amuse you. Allison's smile finally faltered. Jason, she said quietly but firmly, nobody asked you to. Silence. Real thick, stunned silence. The audience didn't clap. They didn't murmur. They just stared wide-eyed. Then Allison straightened and went back into presenter mode. Right, she said with forced brightness, turning toward the camera. After the break, we'll be talking about Jason's new documentary series and what viewers can expect. Stay tuned. The music rose. The red light switched off. Momoa sank back into the sofa with a hard exhale, jaw locked. Dermot rubbed his temples. And Allison. Allison sat still as stone, giving Momoa a look that said, push me one more time. Go on. I dare you. The moment the cameras blinked red again, the tension in the studio was so sharp you could almost hear it hum. Dermot inhaled deeply, pasting on a smile that trembled only slightly. Allison sat tall, shoulders back, her professionalism wrapped around her like armor. Momoa, meanwhile, lounged on the sofa with the posture of a man doing everyone a favor simply by existing there. Welcome back to This Morning, Dermot said brightly. We're continuing our conversation with Jason Momoa. Activist, Momoa corrected sharply without looking at him. Dermot blinked. Right, apologies. Momoa gave a thin, satisfied nod. Allison's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker, just a flicker of irritation in her eyes. Jason, she said, clasping her hands. Before the break, we were discussing your relationship with the studios and the possibility of reconciliation. Let's broaden the scope a bit. Many viewers are curious about your relationship with the other major actors. Your former co-stars. Momoa rolled his eyes dramatically. Allison paused. Is there still communication there? Momoa shrugged, the gesture dripping with indifference. They have people to speak for them, agents, publicists, handlers. I'm sure one of them has my number. Allison narrowed her eyes slightly. So you haven't spoken? Not lately, Momoa said with a smirk. I imagine they're too busy counting their residuals or something. Dermot winced again. Jason, come on. What? Momoa snapped. I'm not going to pretend everything is rosy just to make morning television more palatable. Allison kept her voice calm but firmer now. We're not asking you to pretend. We're asking for honesty, not hostility. Momoa leaned forward, eyes flashing. Honesty makes people uncomfortable, Allison. That's not my problem. Dermot tried to lighten the mood. Let's pivot for a moment. Momoa cut him off sharply. No, let's not pivot. Let's stop pretending the movie industry is some flawless fairy tale institution. I'm the only one willing to tell the truth. You're not the only one, Allison said, her tone finally losing some of its softness. You're just the one who keeps repeating it the loudest. Momoa stiffened. Are you suggesting I enjoy airing my trauma? I'm suggesting, she said carefully, that maybe repeating the same wounds on every platform has made it harder for people to see the good work you're doing. Momoa let out a short, humorless laugh. People prefer drama over depth. That's why shows like this exist. The studio went utterly still. Dermot's eyes widened. Allison blinked once slowly. Shows like this, she repeated. Momoa waved a dismissive hand. You know, light entertainment, nothing too challenging. Something inside Allison's jaw twitched. Jason, she said, her voice controlled but icy. We've interviewed presidents, scientists, activists, survivors. You underestimate us. Momoa smirked. Do I? Dermot muttered under his breath. Oh, bloody hell. Allison chose not to acknowledge it. Instead, she leaned slightly forward, voice steady. So tell me, Jason, if you think this is beneath you, why are you here? Momoa's eyebrows lifted. Publicity, obviously. The audience gasped out loud this time. Dermot choked on air. Allison's face changed just subtly, but enough for everyone watching to feel the shift. I see, she said quietly. Publicity. Momoa nodded like he had just solved a math equation. Yes, you asked me here because you needed a headline. And I came because I needed reach. It's transactional. Let's not dress it up. Allison's lips parted in disbelief. Jason, she said, voice low, we invited you because you claimed you had something meaningful to say. I always have something meaningful to say, Momoa shot back. It's not my fault if people can't handle it. Dermot leaned forward reluctantly. Jason, mate, look, you've said a lot today, but you're also shutting down every question like it's an attack. These aren't unfair questions. Momoa placed a hand dramatically on his chest. Unfair? Really? Asking about my family, about my career, about my former co-stars, about my trauma. That's fair, is it? Allison's patience snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet precision of a woman who had been pushed too far. You talk about your career, Jason, she said, her voice trembling slightly, not with anger, but with disappointment. But I need to say this gently. You are not the only person in the world who has felt exploited. You're not the only person who offered. Momoa's eyes flared with indignation. And you're not the only one who knows pain, Allison continued, her voice steadying. But other people face their pain without lashing out at everyone trying to listen. Jason stared at her, stunned. And frankly, she added, you came here today acting like we owe you something. Momoa blinked. I didn't. You did, Allison said firmly, every word dripping with entitlement since you sat down. Dermot looked between them like a man watching a fire spread. Momoa's defensiveness surged. I'm entitled because I refuse to be silenced. I'm entitled because I speak the truth. No, Allison said calmly. You're entitled because you expect respect while giving none. Boom, silence. Pure seismic silence. Momoa's jaw locked. His fist clenched. A producer off camera swallowed audibly. Dermot whispered, we should cut to break. But Allison lifted a finger without looking away from Momoa. Not yet, she said. Momoa leaned back slowly, fury burning in his eyes. Do you want honesty, Allison? He spat. Fine, the truth is. But Allison shook her head gently, almost sadly. No, Jason, we've heard enough truth from you for one day. A stunned beat of silence. Then the floor manager counted down. Going to break in 5, 4, 3, 2. The red light faded. Momoa exhaled sharply, nostrils flaring. Allison sat back, chest rising and falling, collecting herself for the storm she knew was coming. Because one thing was certain, the next segment would be the one that finally blows everything up. The tension clung to the studio like smoke as the cameras flicked red once more. The break had done nothing, absolutely nothing, to calm the atmosphere. If anything, it made the temperature rise. Dermot cleared his throat as if trying to swallow fear itself. Allison sat straight, still professional, but her jaw held a firmness that hadn't been there in part 1, part 2, nor even at the beginning of part 3. And Jason Momoa, the globally recognized star, sat forward, elbows on knees, eyes burning with indignation so sharp it sparked across the set. Welcome back, Dermot began carefully. We're here with Jason M. Activist, Momoa interrupted sharply. It's fine. Dermot blinked at Allison. She nodded once as if silently, telling him, just keep going. So, Dermot continued, we want to shift gears for a moment and talk about your charity work, your projects. Momoa let out a loud, frustrated sigh that visibly grated across the room. Oh, for God's sake, he muttered. Are we really doing the PR questions now? How typical. Dermot's mouth fell open slightly. Jason, we're trying to give you a chance to talk about your actual work. Momoa rolled his eyes. Please, everyone knows you'll drag me back to Hollywood gossip within 30 seconds. Let's not insult each other. That was it. The audience heard the snap inside Allison, the emotional sound of someone who had been patient long enough. Jason, she said slowly, you came here today to talk about your work. That's why the team invited you. Momoa laughed in a short, mocking burst. Don't patronize me, Allison. You invited me here because I'm a headline. So let's not pretend you're suddenly interested in my foundations and outreach programs. Allison's lips pressed into a thin line. Dermot lifted a hand. Jason, mate, Momoa swung his gaze toward him with ice. Don't mate me. I'm not your buddy. Dermot recoiled as if struck. The studio gasped. Allison inhaled slow and deep. All right, she said, voice steady but trembling with contained frustration. Let's move forward. You've been in the headlines recently due to comments about your former co-stars. There it is, Momoa snapped, pointing a finger dramatically. See, straight back to the gossip. You people are obsessed. Allison blinked. Jason, you're the one who publicly discussed them. You spoke about them in your interviews. You wrote about them in your book. You compared them to... Momoa cut her off, rising with arrogance. I shared my truth, my story. If the media can't handle that, it's not my problem. Allison kept her voice measured, barely. It becomes a problem when you attack anyone who asks about it. Momoa's nostrils flared. Attack? You think I'm attacking you? Please. If I were truly attacking you, you'd know. Dermot whispered. Jesus Christ. Allison's shoulders squared. The temperature in the room shifted again, this time decisively. Jason, she said, voice low but firm. You're a guest here and you're not behaving like one. We've tried to have a respectful conversation with you. Momoa's laugh cut her off like a blade. Respect? He barked. You ambushed me with emotional manipulation and gossip. Respect has to be earned, Allison. And this show, he waved his hand in a dismissive arc, hasn't earned mine. The audience actually gasped out loud. Allison froze. Dermot closed his eyes in defeat. The floor manager audibly muttered, Oh God. Jason, Allison said softly, her voice finally trembling, not with fear, but with controlled anger. That was uncalled for. Momoa leaned back smugly. Truth hurts, doesn't it? Now, Allison Hammond was not someone who snapped easily. She was known for being warm, gentle, welcoming, the person you wanted to interview you. But what Momoa had just said, the arrogance dripping from each word, was the final straw. She sat slowly back in her chair, folded her hands, and looked at him with piercing calm. Okay, she said, let me say something and listen carefully, Jason. Momoa smirked. Oh, this should be good. Dermot whispered, Mate, don't. But Momoa ignored him. Allison leaned forward just an inch. It was enough to silence the whole room. You keep coming on these platforms, she began quietly, claiming you want to tell your story, your truth, your trauma. But what I see sitting in front of me today is not a man sharing his truth. Momoa frowned, thrown off. What I see, she continued, steady as stone, is a man convinced everyone owes him something. Jason stiffened. What I see, she went on, is someone who expects the world to bow because he once was a major star. A few audience members clapped involuntarily. Momoa's jaw clenched. Are you done? No, Allison said, her voice rising an inch. Not yet. Dermot's hands were on his face. What I see, Allison pressed, is someone who demands respect while offering none. Someone who lashes out at every question, every host, every person who doesn't feed his ego exactly the way he wants. Momoa scoffed loudly. Oh, please. And someone, she finished, who was mistaking arrogance for strength. Momoa sat frozen. Allison inhaled deeply, gathered herself, and said the words that would break the internet by nightfall. You know what, Jason? We're done. Momoa stared at her, stunned. Excuse me. Allison stood up slowly. This isn't working. This isn't journalism anymore. It's emotional abuse, and we don't tolerate that on this show. Momoa looked around, almost laughing. You're throwing me out? Dermot whispered. Allison, are we? Yes, she said firmly. We are. She turned toward the cameras. Producers, we're ending this interview now. Momoa sputtered. You can't be serious. Allison looked back at him with unwavering calm. This isn't a Hollywood set, she said softly. And I'm not one of your publicists. A beat. Please leave the studio. The room erupted. The audience gasped. Dermot nearly fell off his chair. The crew stood frozen like statues. Momoa stood, his face flushed red with shock and fury. You'll regret this, he hissed. Allison lifted her chin. No, Jason, I'll sleep fine. Momoa ripped off his microphone, threw it onto the sofa, and stormed off toward the exit. Cameras captured every step. As he disappeared off screen, Dermot exhaled hard. Blimey. Allison turned back to the camera, composed once more. Ladies and gentlemen, she said softly, thank you for staying with us. We'll be right back. The red light blinked off. The studio fell silent. Everyone knew they had just witnessed not an interview, but a televised implosion. And that was Jason Momoa's explosive appearance on This Morning. A moment that started with tension and ended with a clash no one will forget. What do you think? Did Allison do the right thing by ending the interview? Or did Jason finally cross a line that couldn't be ignored?